right, friends, today we are going to talk about a new type of measurement. And I want you to imagine that this yellow surface is the floor of, let's say, a kitchen. Now, there are a couple of different things I could measure in this kitchen, right? I could measure the length I could measure how long it was if I had a tape measure or a ruler. I could measure how wide the room was with my tape measure or my ruler. And if I was measuring the length or the width, both of those would just be straight measurements, wouldn't they? I'd just be measuring a straight line. I could measure the height of how tall from floor to ceiling my room was, and that would be a straight line too. But if I wanted to measure the surface of my floor, if I wanted to figure out how much carpet I needed to take up the entire floor of my kitchen or my bedroom or my classroom, or if I was laying down tile or if I was laying down new wood floors and I needed to figure out how much wood I needed to cover the entire floor of my kitchen, that's not a straight measurement. I can't just measure one length and have my answer. I can't just measure the length of my room. I can't just measure the single width of my room and know how much wood or carpet or tile I would need to fill the whole space of my floor. And so when we are measuring the space that something takes up, we are measuring in a different way. We're not just going to measure one straight measurement and be done. So today we're going to look at how we could measure the surface of something or how much space a shape takes up. And we're going to specifically look at rectangles today. Now, again, I like to picture this as a floor of a bedroom, or I think I said the floor of a kitchen. So let's imagine this is the floor of our kitchen and we are going to lay down wood, and we need to figure out how much wood we need to buy to fill all the space. Now, I can't just measure the length, because if I only measure the length, then I'm not really measuring all of my floor, right? I also need to measure my width. If I measure the length of my floor and I measure the width, that's going to take care of my whole rectangular shape. So that would be getting us somewhere. Now, I'm not going to use a ruler. I'm actually going to use these little tick marks that are already provided for me. And I can see that they're very evenly spaced. So they've already been measured out. And they're about an inch apart. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 tick marks, which means I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spaces along the length of my room. And I also have 1, 2, 3, 4 tick marks that are about an inch apart. And that means I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces along the width of my room. However, it would be really nice if I could see these lines all the way, because then that would start to break up the room into shapes that I can recognize and that I can measure a little bit more easily. So what if we pretended that these lines extended? They would look something like this. Now that's looking more like I could measure the space of my room. The space of my room, right, the whole space, the surface of that floor, is now broken up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rectangles. But you know what? That's only talking about the surface in terms of length. We talked about how we also needed width. Well, first off, let's look at what would happen if I extended out the lines. For the width of my room, we said was going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces this way. And this is what these lines would look like extended. And that is also, it's looking like our surface is a little bit more measured, and it's looking like it's been broken up into measurements. And in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rectangles, but they're much longer. And again, these rectangles are only measuring based on the width of the room, not the length. So it'd be really nice if what I was measuring by was the same size, because these two rectangles aren't the same size. So I can't say that the floor of my kitchen is 10 rectangles, because in this one it's 5 rectangles. They're different sized rectangles. It'd be really nice if what I was measuring my kitchen by, or the surface of my kitchen, if they were all the same size. So let's see what happens if we extend both the length and the width at the same time. So if I measure 10 spaces across my length and 5 spaces for my width, and I extend both my length lines and my width lines, let's look at what we'll get. We got squares. And look at that, they are all perfectly even. Yes, I can actually measure that. So if I extend out my length and I extend out my width lines, I get all of these perfect squares that are exactly the same size. And we're gonna say they're all an inch. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 going this way. And I could count by tens going across. I could say I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 squares taking up the surface of my floor. I could also count them this way by fives. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. I got 50 that way too. And it's because they're all the same size, right? So I can count either by length or I can count by width. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to end up with the same total each time. We call this measuring, when we measure the surface, how much space a shape is taking up. In this case, we're thinking of this as a floor. We call this the area. We call this the area. Of a shape. The area is how much space it takes up. It is the surface or the inside of every shape. Every shape always has an area. It has an inside to it. And the most common way that we measure area is with squares. And so I could say that, I need another piece of paper. I could say that the area, which we always use a capital A in math to represent area, I could say that the area of this floor or the area of this rectangle is 50 square units. I'm going to move this up a little bit so you can see it. Now, I would put units if I didn't know how big the squares were. But in this case, I'm going to say that they're an inch by an inch. And so I can get even more specific, and I can say that the area is actually 50 square inches. I'm going to show you another way we could write it, because you might see this too. I could say that the area, I'm going to push this down just a tad for you, is 50 inches, and IN just stands for inches, and then we are going to say squared. Inches squared simply means that you have a square that is 1 inch by 1 inch. Okay? These are 3 different ways we can talk about the area or how much space a shape takes up. And we always measure area in squares. As we saw before, it didn't work to measure in rectangles because our rectangles could be different sizes. But squares are always a uniform size. Every shape will always have an area.